What's up, and welcome to the Non-Fungible Creator Show. This is your host, Non-Fungible TC, Non-Fungible Today, and Non-Fungible Tomorrow. And today we are so happy to have Antonius, who is the creator of Food Masku, where he makes meals into masks and then eats them. So the project has, sold out and was covered by media like a New York Times and also CBC Radio. So thank you so much for being here, Antonius. How are you?
Good, thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for being here. And to start off, can you share more about your background before NFTs and Web 3.0?
Sure. I started my career actually in neuroscience, and then I realized that I was more interested in the media that I was creating while I was a researcher. And then I moved to New York. I went to school at NYU, Tisch, School of the Performing Arts. And after I graduated, I started teaching for Tisch, and then moving to Shanghai, where NYU opened a campus in NYU Shanghai. What I was teaching was interactive media, so I was teaching students how to code and how to use electronics and code them as well to create their art. And then I won a Fulbright scholarship to go teach in Indonesia, where I was born, but I'm an American citizen. So I got there and I was teaching interactive media to all these amazing art students. And I liked it so much, I extended my stay, but I needed to come back to New York. And when I came back to New York, it was to renew my passport and to renew my visa. And the day I was supposed to pick up my visa from the consulate, the Indonesian consulate, New York went into lockdown and I couldn't go anywhere. I was stuck in New York City. And one day during a Zoom call, kind of like this, somebody got on and they had a filter like a pickle and they couldn't turn it off and they were embarrassed. So I took my dinner and I put it on my face and I said, look, I have a face filter too. And it was the first time I heard laughter in a month because it was such a difficult time for us during that time in the lockdown. Then I realized like I may be onto something and I started to do it every single day. And that's when the New York Times picked me up. Now, unfortunately, other people started taking my work and putting it online as well, like on different platforms. So I looked into how do I own something like a digital item. And that's when I discovered NFTs. And then I minted my first NFT March of 2021. And it sold out within 24 hours. Well, the auction started within 24 hours, so it sold in 48 hours. And I've been minting my work ever since.
Well, I think that's really amazing because this is just like almost 1 year ago, right? And was that your first venture into NFTs? Like, how do you find out about NFTs and blockchain back then?
Right. So I was looking up how do I own something digitally and able to trace it back to me, because that was the most important thing for me, right? I was already going viral. One of my videos had 1.7 million views, and the next one was 3.7 million views. So it was getting bigger and bigger, and people were taking my stuff and putting it elsewhere. So that's when I looked up, how do I own something that's a digital item? And then I saw that Beeple, one of the artists I was following, was going into NFTs. And the day that he sold his $69 million piece, I sold my first NFT. No comparison in price though. It's like,
Wow. But I think there is a comparison in terms of creativity, and also dedication. I mean, like for people to be where he is today, he's a 3D artist and designer. He's been doing a lot within the space. And for you, like how many pictures is this, right? Is it like it's 2000, right? So that's like 2000 days for you to create this whole
Well, you're
collection.
looking at the generative project. The actual project that got me into fame was in the Quarantine series, which was 90 days. And I did that because I showed my mentor, Malati Suryodarmo. We had done a show together in New York City. Malati is one of the most important Indonesian contemporary artists, has done performances all over the world. She's the protege of Marina Abramovic. And I showed her what I was working on. And she said, this is really amazing, but you have to put in your discipline and your training into this. And that's when I started doing it 90 days in a row. And then the ones that really got me famous on the blockchain was I made a series of 100 photos during the first 100 days of the Biden-Harris administration. So I think the dailies really show a different process than had I just done one mask, you know? And I think that's an important part of the journey as well.
And it's interesting how you were able to put art and also with your background in science together to generate this collection.
Yeah, actually, what I was working with Malati on was I was measuring her brain waves while she was dreaming, and then using those brain waves, we translated it into dance and also gave it to a composer named Jessica Kenny. Jessica is a composer behind Midsummer, the horror movie, and we created a piece together. And we were supposed to do more because, you know, whenever a performance does well, usually you go and tour it and then you show it to other people. And we had many shows planned, but all of those shows got canceled due to COVID. So I had to change what I was doing. You know, I was switching from doing things live and in person to posting it online as a digital experience.
And you know, coming from an interactive media background, right, and also being a professor there and teaching other people, like, do you think that the state of NFTs and also the idea of how NFT could become even more generative or interactive, like, is there a chance that you know, NFT has enabled this like to happen, right? In the past, for it's very hard for an art to become generative, where there is a ownership.
I guess so. I mean, what I'm excited about with NFTs is number one, digital ownership, but that's really just because you can trace and go back to the origins of where that file comes from. But what I'm really excited about is like it doesn't have to be limited to art, right? In fact, I never actually liked the labels of those things. I think arts and sciences, all of them come melding together into this one crazy human experience, right? So I can see it in the academic world, like you can actually trace knowledge to its source and you can trace that source back to its knowledge again. And this really opens up an entire world of possibilities because suddenly you have not only a way to see the sources, you can also verify the sources. So I think it's really going to push the envelope on knowledge and the idea of humanity. That's what I think about NFTs.
Yeah, and I think as an artist or as a creator, right? I do have a question that I want to ask you is that what is your thought on one out of one art versus profile picture art, right? Because there has been this debate on Twitter at times, and to a certain extent, Food Masku is kind of like a blend, right? Because it is a one out of one thing that you have been doing in the past. But for a day on a daily basis, right? But then you kind of blend it both together where you created this generated project. So what is your thought on this?
So I create both one of one art and also I have a generative project called The Delectables by Food Masku. Delectables were the first photo generative project on the blockchain, and we were able to do that only because I was able to work with a team to recreate Photoshop, but using JavaScript. So when you create a PFP project, usually it's just PNGs on top of PNGs on top of PNGs. But when you do that with photography, it doesn't work because you actually need to blend things in and you need to add shadows and you need to add all the subtleties. And when I first saw it, I realized like this is impossible. But then I found a team that was able to do so. So in my opinion, both are apparent as forms of art. I really love doing my one-of-one pieces in person, doing them on my face. But when you create a generative work, it's like you're dancing with code and you're dancing with technology. So I really love that experience as well. In terms of the market, that's a little different, right? So my one-on-one works usually go out higher in price, and my generative work generally are lower in the floor, but can go very high when you get to the rares.
Okay, amazing, amazing. I really like how you have this insight. You know, because it's kind of like two different market, right? You know, profile pic project and also one out of one could be two different type of market. So as an artist, with a sold out collection, you know, with more than 1,000 collectors with your generated project, what would your advice be to new artists that are coming to this space, or you know, even people who are working in interactive media?
So my advice to artists in general is I think you just need to focus and follow on your art form as it is. And if there's a market out there, which there is, then you find it. So part of the problem though is like you do have to become your own marketer, you do have to become your own pitch person, your own hype person until you find your community. And I know that community word is a strange one that gets thrown around a lot, but I'll define you as basically find the group of artists that will support you, will be able to be there for you, will have your back, will give you critique when you ask for it, and will push you up and give you positive feedback whenever you need it. And those artists are also going to going to be able to help you market. They're going to be able to help you grow in terms of your audience in this space. So that is my biggest advice to all artists.
So find like-minded people who are able to, who also genuinely shares the passion with you, who also understand what you're going through, within the space, right? Because this space, a lot is going on at the same time, right? So many things can happen in just a few days. So yeah, I think that's an amazing advice. So as I was doing my research, because I was like interested in why you decide to put food on your face on a daily basis, and I found out that it was because you were having like a similar Zoom call, and then you tried to make your friend feel less embarrassed, and that spin off this project. But as I was doing my research about you, I found out that you were actually a gun violence survivor. So I was just wondering if you mind sharing more with us today.
Yeah, and it does have something to do with this piece, Food Masku, because I believe that all my works of art focus on trauma, and
Mm,
it comes from personal experience. I had just come back from South Korea, and I had just done a few performances in South Korea. And it was 2013. I was walking down the street, and it was after the 4th of July. And in the 4th of July here in New York City, we get a lot of fireworks.
mm,
So, middle of the day, I thought I heard what were fireworks, but it turned out to be a man shooting at a pregnant woman in front of me. And the bullet hit her twice in the leg. One of the bullets, which would have hit her in the head, missed her and hit me in the chest instead. I was just walking down the street. I don't know who these two people are. So I ended up going into a coma.
mm,
And when I woke up 5 days later, I was the happiest person in the world. And I was also the angriest, the most frustrated. And I didn't know what to do with all that energy. And yet I have no energy because I was so broken. I could barely move my legs. I could barely walk. I could barely do anything.
mhm,
And I needed 17 months of physical therapy. So I took photos of myself every single day from the day that I was shot until the day of my shooter had their trial.
mm,
And in those days, I would take a photo of my scars, and they would change. Actually, you would change. You would see the changes in like how I was healing. You could also see the changes in my body because I started to gain my weight back.
mm,
At my lowest, I went down to 90 pounds. So, I lost a lot of body mass because of the shooting.
mm,
What I learned from that experience is that even though trauma accentuates the bad memories, like all the horrible things that happened to me, it also accentuates the good ones very, very strongly. So I remember things like the first time I was able to get up and walk,
mm,
and the first time I actually was able to go for a run, things like that. And like I remember the first time I saw my parents when I woke up from the coma, and I realized that trauma is nothing you can ignore. But during times of trauma, you do need those positive experiences, those good memories. Otherwise, you're only going to remember the bad ones. So during COVID, I realized we were all experiencing a generational trauma
mm.
that every single one of us was going to experience no matter what. So I thought it was important that at least we have a little bit of joy and levity during the experience. And that's why I started doing Food Masku.
And I think it's amazing for you to recover from that because you were quite innocent in the whole incident. You were just walking down the street, and then you just got shot in a conflict, right? And now you're able to use that past experience into what into art and also to share that by selling them as NFTs as well.
Yes, and also, people were responding. And so this is a very different experience because most of the time when people create art, they think of like the artist creating and releasing and then that's it. But this was a back and forth. I was actually talking to people daily, like, oh, what do you want to see next? And they're like, oh, I want to see a lasagna mask next, oh, I want to see like bihun or something like that,
Yeah.
So it was a really cool experience that couldn't have happened any other time than during this time when we were all stuck at home.
Yeah, and I saw that in one of your interviews, you said that the worst mask was mashed potatoes because you're almost suffocating.
So I made the bad mistake of putting mashed potatoes on my face and I put in holes so I can breathe out of it. But then I poured gravy on top of it, and there's something about the mixture of gravy and mashed potatoes. It becomes this kind of non-Newtonian fluid, and it just got up my nose and couldn't come out, and I almost choked in it.
And so yeah, moving on. I'm just curious. Like I know that you have a season 2 coming out, right? Season 2 for Food Masku. Is there a twist in season 2, or is there anything that you could share with us?
A lot of season 2 is going to be based on winter food because I was making it during the winter season. However, creating a project like this takes a lot of time, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I also want to do better the next time compared to the first time that I released a project. So it's taking a little longer than expected. And also, I think that there is something to be said about an artist taking their time. I think it's good that sometimes you step back and you look back at what you've created, right? So I'm not just putting out pieces just because I put in a lot of thought into these pieces. So just accepting that fact, even though I'm getting a lot of pressure from people to release because it feels like, everything in NFT space, one day feels like 1 week, 1 week feels like a month, and, an entire year is a decade. So I'm trying to take my time with it because I've been fortunate. I found success in this piece. And I found this to be very empowering. So I don't feel the need to release as much as I usually do.
Yeah, and I was just, you were talking about winter food, and the first thing I thought of is a turkey, on a Christmas
Yeah.
dinner. So I was just wondering if you're gonna put like a whole turkey on your face. Like, is that possible?
Yeah, I don't eat meat, but I can put
Okay.
up something like that. I made actually already in season 1 because it was during the fall, a turkey with that was created out of bread, so challah turkey.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of combinations you can do, and what came into my mind was that by wearing your food, right, you're kind of sharing like culture, right? You're sharing
Yes.
the culture of the food itself, right? So I was just hearing from you because you've been traveling around the world. You've been to Shanghai, you've been to Korea, and now you're in the New York City. So I was just wondering, have you tried doing like a Food Masku collection related to different cultures? Like, or is it
I,
done already?
That's such a good question because next week, actually not next week, when is it? The next 3 weeks from now, I'll be going to Paris for my first solo show. And I'm going to create a collection that's just all French food, specifically from that area of France. So I'm going to do more regional pieces like that as I move forward in my project.
Yeah, I mean that would be like a beautiful way to document culture, and right now as we are opening up the borders and people could finally travel, right? You could kind of be like merging a travel foodie slash NFT artist thing together. So I think that's a really cool idea.
People forget that like I'm an artist first and I make NFT second. So there are pieces of mine that are never going to be on the blockchain just because it doesn't match. And one of the things I did was I went and I created a series called Outdoor Dining. And I went outside of the restaurants that were doing outdoor dining and I created a mask from the food that's from there. So things like that I might be able to do locally when I start traveling the world again.
Yeah, and you bring up a really interesting point, right? Because not all art has to be an NFT, right? Like, because right now everyone is into this craze, like, oh, everything has to be an NFT. Oh, are you an artist? Are you a traditional artist? Oh, just paint this and let's take a photo. Let's make it an NFT. So how do you strike the balance between judging what should be minted as an NFT and what should not be minted as an NFT?
I always tell people if it can be digital and you want to own that digital piece, then can definitely be an NFT. And also the second thing I remind people is you're not collecting the art per se, but you're collecting the token, and that token is a representation of the art. So if you can tokenize it, then you can definitely make it into an NFT, which is why I believe that performance art is going to have an explosion with NFT space, because it's very hard to sell performance art. Usually you need to actually go to the piece and experience the piece and be there, physically there. But the cool thing about tokenization is it actually concretizes, or it makes something less abstract, basically. So it's a really good thing for people like performance artists and people like conceptual artists, because you can't just sell a video of a performance piece on a gallery setting. Most of the time that doesn't work really well. But when you tokenize a performance, then that is closer to the essence of what we're trying to create.
Interesting. I think that's like capturing a point of time and then tokenizing it, because that's the technology itself, right? The underlying technology is tokenizing it. And another idea just came into my mind, and that is metaverse, right? And also performance art. So as someone who's a practitioner in interactive media, what do you think about the future of the metaverse, and how can performance artists embrace this technology? Is it all gonna be like VR, AR related, or is there more to that?
It could be. I really love the idea of the metaverse, and I love the fact that we are going to go through so many variations of it, and some of them will fail and some of them will succeed, and hopefully we learn from those failures. I'm actually less interested in what we present artists can do and perform in the spaces. I'm more interested in what happens when the technology is so good that it can recreate, and it can recreate performances that have already happened in the past. So for me, it's like when you look at like the experience of people when they see a photograph from their past get fixed, like somebody fixes a photograph that was like ruined because of weather, and suddenly it's like their family members are back with them again. So just thinking of like, what if we could have from like the videos of people in the past, like there was never a video of Isadora Duncan, but there were some films, I think, and there were some photographs of it. And like what if we can recreate that into a metaverse version of that? I'm really excited about things like that.
Yeah, and what I was thinking is that right now there's VR painting, right? Where you have a performer or you have an artist, paint in a 3D space. And when we were talking about the metaverse and performance art, what I had in mind is that another possibility is that you could record that painting and then actually experience it as the painter paints it, if it's tokenized as well in the future. I'm not sure if it makes sense, but I also see what you're saying. It's kind of like Harry Potter, right? You have an image and that is actually an animated image, but in a 3D space. We never know. Could AI replicate that setting like when we watch a game or a movie?
I think so. I think in the future there would be enough power within the technology that these portraits that I've taken as Food Masku can be recreated, and it's like as if you're talking to me in person again. I think that's totally possible, and I love that idea. I know it sounds a little scary in Black Mirror, but I also think that all technology can be good or bad. It really depends on the application of it.
What was it? The visual in my mind just now was that you have a 3D camera of you being a food master, right? Putting the food on you, recording the whole process, and then someone wearing a VR where he could look at your food in a 3D space. That was what was in my mind when you were saying.
Yeah, that's a total possibility too. It's not necessarily the direction I want to get into. I think the power of Food Masku again is like when you make something physical into the digital world, we have a lot of allowances. You're allowed to do certain things, like do weird things like turn your face into a pickle. But when you turn the digital into the physical, those allowances are less. And I guess that's what I'm pushing. Like, when are you not gonna allow me to do this?
Interesting. That's an interesting take. It's like the opposite of what we usually see, right? So before we end the stream, is there anything else you'd like to share?
um, so I think I would like to give out one of my NFTs to the first person who comments in the comment section. I have a papaya, so I'm gonna try to mask it. And the person that posts and writes down the word papaya first will win an NFT from me. Just also comment your wallet address if you can, and I will be able to send it to you. So usually how I create my masks, I take a skewer and I skewer it through the food, and then I take some clippers, some bread. Do you like papaya?
Yeah, I do. I like papaya. There's a lot of texture
Yeah,
in papaya. Yeah, I do.
a lot of what?
Like there's a lot of texture with the seed in the papaya.
Do you eat the seeds?
No, I don't. Do you? Like, I'm not sure if you can eat
I
them.
don't, but some of my friends do, and I think that's gross. But like, I guess I have eaten the seeds before. I know it's healthier for you to eat the seeds, but sometimes, I just don't like things, and it's too spicy, and it doesn't match with the taste of the papaya.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, it reminds me of lychee. Lychee, if you eat a lot, in Chinese we say there's something that's very hot, right? There's a lot of fire, right? But if you eat the seed, it makes it more cool, right? So it's interesting how eating the seed could kind of cure some elements from the food themselves.
Oh, definitely. Food and the experience of food and the culture of food is such a big part of human experience, and that's also another reason why I continue to do Food Masku the way it is, because it always causes people to have some sort of human experience that can't be done anywhere else.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool. Now we saw a live performance, even though there was some delay in between, but we saw an amazing live performance of you making a mask. And
There's a
so,
delay? I didn't know about that.
oh, it was delaying on my side, but it looks great. In the end, it comes out really cool. Oh, hello. So usually, once you make a mask, do you take a photo with like a DSLR, and then usually how does this process go? Like,
Yeah, and well, I always eat the mask. And yeah, I do take a photo with my DSLR. I have a camera that's also recording video of the entire experience. And then uh, sorry, and then I edit the video and I also edit the photograph, and then that's when I mint it.
awesome, awesome. So thank you so much for being here, Food Masku. It is a pleasure to have you. And thank you for sharing your story, as an artist and also as someone who, survived a gunshot wound and how that, changed your view in life. Because sometimes everything that it's easy to take things for granted, right? Even just, walking itself, we sometimes take it for granted. But from your experience, we learned that actually never take things for granted, right? Never, who would have knew like a pandemic would pause the whole world for a few years. So yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, okay, bye bye.
Goodbye.